Annabelle didn't just terrorize one family. There are 3 documented cases involving the world's most cursed doll that have never been fully revealed to the public. 3 different stories, 3 different victims, but all with the same disturbing ending. Prepare to discover the most sinister accounts of Annabelle that have been kept secret for decades. Donna, a 21-year-old nursing student, received a vintage Raggedy Ann doll from her mother as a birthday present in 1970. Her mother had found the doll in a small antique shop and was enchanted by its nostalgic and seemingly harmless appearance. Donna placed the doll in her bedroom in the apartment she shared with her classmate, Angie, thinking it would be a cute decoration and a fond reminder of family. For the first few weeks, Annabelle remained exactly where Donna had placed her, sitting on the bed, leaning against the headboard. But gradually, small details began to stand out. The doll would subtly shift position. An arm that had been bent would appear extended the next day. Crossed legs would become straight legs. Donna initially thought Angie was moving the doll, but when she questioned her friend, she discovered that she, too, had noticed the changes and thought Donna was repositioning the doll. The changes became more dramatic and impossible to ignore. Donna found Annabelle in the living room, sitting on the main sofa, even though she was certain she had left the doll in her bedroom before leaving for class. Another morning, she discovered Annabelle kneeling on the bathroom floor, positioned in a way that looked like she was praying or begging for something. The position was so specific and human that it sent chills down both students' spines. It was then that the messages began appearing scattered throughout the apartment. Small pieces of paper in childlike handwriting, always containing pleas for help. Help me. I'm alone. Don't leave me. The paper was an old type neither of them owned, and the writing looked like it had been written by a child with motor difficulties. The messages appeared in the most unexpected places, inside books, under pillows, even taped to the inside of the bathroom mirror. Angie's boyfriend, Lou, was suspicious of Annabelle from the beginning. He felt an inexplicable aversion to the doll and begged them both to get rid of it. His suspicions were confirmed when he experienced the first physical attack. During a nap in the apartment, Lou woke up struggling to breathe and with red marks on his neck, as if he had been strangled. When he looked back at the bed where he had fallen asleep, Annabelle was there, watching him with her black button eyes. The situation escalated when Donna began finding red stains on the doll. The liquid looked like blood, but had an oily consistency and a putrid odor that didn't match any known fluid. The stains often appeared on Annabelle's stitched hands, as if she had been injuring something or someone during the night. Subsequent analysis was unable to pinpoint the exact nature of the substance. Desperate for answers, Donna and Angie sought out a medium who held a seance in the apartment. The medium claimed to have contacted the spirit of a 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins, who had died on the lot where the building was built. According to the spirit communication, the child was lost and simply wanted to be accepted and loved by the students. Moved by the story, Donna and Angie gave permission for the spirit to remain. This permission was the fatal mistake that turned strange phenomena into outright attacks. Annabelle became more aggressive, appearing in threatening positions and causing dangerous domestic accidents. Objects fell from shelves when someone walked near the doll, knives appeared from her drawers, and the feeling of being watched became constant and oppressive for everyone who visited the apartment. The final attack on Lou was what prompted the students to seek professional help. Lou woke in the early morning with 7 deep scratches on her chest, arranged in a pattern that seemed almost ritualistic. The marks were too deep to have been caused by human fingernails, and blood was smeared across the sheets. When she looked at the foot of the bed, Annabelle was there, but something about her expression seemed different, more malicious and satisfied. It was then that Ed and Lorraine Warren were called in to investigate the case. They immediately identified that it wasn't a child spirit, but a demonic entity that had used the story of the dead child to gain permission to remain in the physical world. The investigation revealed that there was no record of a child named Annabelle Higgins having died at the scene, confirming that the medium's story was fabricated by the entity itself to manipulate its victims. Removing Annabelle from the apartment was a complex process that involved exorcism, prayers of protection, and transporting the doll in a specially blessed container. But even during the trip to the Warren Museum, phenomena continued. The car lost control, the engine failed, and Lorraine reported feeling presences trying to interfere with the entity's removal process. In 1982, Megan Cartwright, an obsessive collector of antique dolls, learned of Annabelle's existence through a newspaper article about the Warrens Museum. An expert in vintage toy restoration, Megan developed a fixation with the doll and began visiting the museum regularly, always asking to examine Annabelle more closely. She argued that antique dolls were often misunderstood and that she could restore Annabelle to her original condition. Megan visited the museum weekly, often spending hours observing Annabelle through the glass. Staff noticed she constantly mumbled while looking at the doll, as if carrying on a conversation. When questioned, Megan claimed to be analyzing details of the doll's construction and fabric for academic research purposes. But her behavior became progressively more obsessive and strange. During one of her visits, Megan managed to convince a new employee to let her briefly touch the glass case to examine details of Annabelle's stitching. The moment her hands touched the glass, Megan felt an intense electrical discharge that left her momentarily disoriented. But instead of being frightened, she interpreted the sensation as a special connection with the doll. From that moment on, her obsession transformed into something much more dangerous. Megan began having vivid dreams in which Annabelle emerged from the box and walked around her house. In the dreams, the doll spoke to her about ancient toy-making techniques and secrets about other cursed objects. Megan woke up with detailed information about artifacts she had never studied, as if receiving knowledge directly from a supernatural source. She began recording this information in journals that became progressively darker and more disturbing. Annabelle's influence on Megan intensified when she began creating her own dolls using techniques she claimed to have learned from dreams. These creations had a disturbingly lifelike appearance and a presence that unnerved anyone who saw them. Customers who bought dolls from Megan often returned days later, demanding to return them due to strange phenomena in their homes. Megan's behavior became erratic and obsessive. She began visiting the museum daily, arriving at opening time and staying until closing. Staff reported that she would spend the entire day standing in front of Annabelle's box, sometimes without moving for hours. Security cameras captured Megan making strange hand gestures, as if performing some kind of silent ritual. The situation reached a critical point when Megan attempted to steal Annabelle from the museum. During a special nighttime viewing for collectors, she hid tools in her bag and attempted to break the glass case when she thought no one was watching. The glass resisted her attempts, but the moment she began attacking the protection, all the other artifacts in the museum began to react simultaneously. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered uncontrollably, and a sense of absolute terror gripped everyone present. Megan was found unconscious in front of Annabelle's box, with strange burns on her palms that were the exact shape of the protective symbols etched into the glass. When she regained consciousness, she couldn't remember anything that had happened after touching the box. In the days following the incident, Megan developed a complete aversion to dolls. She got rid of her entire collection, burned her journals about doll-making techniques, and never visited the museum again. But staff reported that for weeks after the incident, Annabelle remained turned toward the door, as if waiting for Megan to return. The doll only returned to its normal position after a purification ritual performed by the Warrens themselves. Megan's case demonstrated that Annabelle possessed the ability to influence people from a distance, establishing psychic connections that could intensify over time. Ed Warren documented that the entity seemed particularly attracted to people with knowledge of the occult or spiritual practices, as if it could use this knowledge to empower its own manifestation in the physical world. In 1988, the Davidson family of Hartford, Connecticut, had never heard of Annabelle when they began experiencing paranormal phenomena in their home. James Davidson, a father of 2 young children, initially attributed the strange occurrences to the stress of a recent move and the children's adjustment to their new surroundings. But when his 5-year-old daughter, Sarah, began talking about her new doll friend, the family discovered they were dealing with something much more sinister. Sarah described her friend as a rag doll with red hair and a blue dress who visited her room at night. The girl told detailed stories about conversations she had with the doll, which supposedly taught her ancient games and songs. Initially, James and his wife, Carol, interpreted these stories as part of the natural imagination of a 5-year-old adjusting to a new home. But Sarah began to demonstrate knowledge about things a child her age shouldn't know. She talked about specific historical events, used words and languages she'd never learned, and accurately described details about the house that even her parents didn't know. When asked how she knew this information, Sarah always gave the same answer. Her doll friend had told her. The first physical sign that something was wrong came when Carol found small, dirty footprints in Sarah's room. The footprints were the size of a doll and led from the window to the child's bed, as if something had walked in the night. There was no logical explanation for how the dirt had gotten into the room, as the window was on the 2nd floor and always remained closed. James installed a camera in Sarah's room to monitor her sleep patterns, worried that she might be sleepwalking. The recordings revealed something that completely terrified the family. For several late nights, Sarah was filmed talking animatedly to something hidden from view. She gestured, laughed, and answered questions no one else could hear. But most disturbing was her body language. She was clearly interacting with something the size of a doll. The situation became dangerous when Sarah began waking up with small, unexplained injuries. Thin scratches on her arms, small purple marks that looked like tiny fingers, and on one occasion, bite marks that were too small to have been caused by a child or pet. Sarah insisted her doll friend was just playing, but sometimes their play got a little aggressive. Carol accidentally discovered the connection to Annabelle when she took Sarah to a routine doctor's appointment. In the waiting room, there was a magazine about paranormal phenomena with a picture of Annabelle on the cover. Sarah immediately pointed to the image and squealed with joy, exclaiming that this was her friend who visited every night. The child's reaction was so intense and specific that Carol bought the magazine and read about the Warren case. Desperate, Carol contacted the Warren Museum and described the events taking place in her home. Lorraine Warren immediately recognized the patterns and warned that the family was experiencing a distant manifestation of Annabelle. According to Lorraine, the entity had found a way to project its influence beyond the confines of its physical prison, especially on children who possessed natural spiritual sensitivity. Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the Davidson home and confirmed the presence of demonic energy, concentrated specifically in Sarah's room. During their investigation, they discovered that the house had been built on land that had previously housed an orphanage that had been destroyed by fire in the previous century. The combination of the site's residual energy and Sarah's spiritual vulnerability had created a bridge that allowed Annabelle to manifest her influence remotely. The exorcism of the house lasted 3 consecutive days. During the process, Sarah had episodes where her personality completely changed, speaking with the voice and mannerisms of a much older child and using language she shouldn't have known. Objects flew across the rooms, temperatures fluctuated dramatically, and everyone present sensed a malevolent presence actively resisting the purification rituals. At the climax of the exorcism, Sarah had a seizure and began speaking in a voice that wasn't her own, describing specific details about the Warren Museum and threatening other family members. Ed Warren immediately recognized the voice as that of the same entity that inhabited Annabelle. The connection was so strong that the doll was literally using Sarah as a means of long-distance communication. After the house was cleansed, the phenomena ceased completely. Sarah stopped talking about her doll friend and gradually returned to normal 5-year-old behavior. But the family never fully recovered from the trauma. They moved to another state a few months later, and James Davidson developed a specific phobia of dolls that persisted for the rest of his life. The Davidson case demonstrated that Annabelle possessed capabilities that went far beyond manipulating physical objects. The entity could establish psychic connections with vulnerable individuals miles away, using these connections to exert influence and potentially possess its victims. Ed Warren documented that this was the first confirmed case of remote manifestation by the entity, establishing that Annabelle's physical confinement did not completely limit her supernatural powers. Father Jason Cook, a young, recently ordained Catholic priest, visited the Warren Museum in 1985 as part of his studies on demonology and exorcism. Confident in his faith and inexperienced with real demonic entities, Father Cook expressed skepticism about the reports involving Annabelle and requested permission to perform his own spiritual tests on the doll. Ed Warren tried to dissuade him, warning of the dangers, but the priest insisted that his religious mission required a direct investigation. Father Cook had studied cases of demonic possession in seminary, but had never encountered a real entity. He believed his ordination and theological knowledge were sufficient protection against any evil force. During his first visit to the museum, he spent hours observing Annabelle and reciting prayers in Latin, searching for signs of supernatural activity. The doll remained motionless, which only reinforced his initial skepticism. Determined to prove that Annabelle was just an ordinary doll surrounded by superstition, Father Cook returned to the museum several times over the following weeks. He brought holy water, crucifixes, and sacred relics, performing test rituals to provoke a reaction from the supposed entity. Ed Warren reluctantly allowed these visits, but always under strict supervision and with additional protections around Annabelle's box. During his 5th visit, Father Cook made a fatal mistake. Confident that nothing had happened during his previous investigations, he asked to touch the glass case directly while reciting a particularly powerful banishing prayer. His intention was to force any present entities to manifest or depart permanently. The moment his hands touched the glass, The temperature in the museum instantly plummeted, and all the lights went out. In the pitch-black darkness, Father Cook felt something grab his wrists through the glass. The sensation was small hands, but with supernatural strength, pulling him against the box. When the emergency lights came on minutes later, Father Cook was found pressed against the glass, unconscious, with deep red marks around his wrists that exactly matched the size of Annabelle's stitched hands. When he regained consciousness, Father Cook was completely changed. He had lost all memory of the events leading up to the incident and developed an intense aversion to any object related to children. Crucifixes caused him physical pain when touched, and he could no longer recite prayers without experiencing severe nausea. His theological knowledge remained intact, but his spiritual connection had been severely damaged. In the days following the incident, Father Cook began experiencing disturbing visions during his prayers. He saw Annabelle growing to human size and walking the aisles of his church, observing children during Mass and services. The visions were so vivid that he developed panic attacks whenever children approached him during his pastoral duties. The situation worsened when Father Cook began finding small notes written in childlike handwriting scattered throughout his home and church. The messages were disturbing and personal, referring to specific sins and moments of doubt known only to him. Most terrifying of all, the notes appeared in sacred places that should have been protected from demonic influence. Inside the Bible, on the altar, even inside the tabernacle where the Eucharist was kept. Father Cook attempted to perform an exorcism on himself, but found he had completely lost his ability to access spiritual power. His prayers seemed hollow, lacking the energy and conviction that had always characterized his religious practice. It was as if his connection with the divine had been corrupted or blocked by Annabelle's influence during those few seconds of direct contact. The case became even more complex when other priests attempted to help Father Cook through purification rituals. During these sessions, paranormal phenomena began to occur. Candles would go out on their own, crucifixes would fall from the walls, and everyone present would sense a malevolent presence actively resisting their efforts at spiritual cleansing. It was as if Annabelle had established a permanent connection that could not be easily severed. Ed Warren was called in to assist with the case and confirmed that Father Cook had become an unwitting conduit for the entity inhabiting Annabelle. The doll had managed to establish a psychic connection during the moment of physical contact, using the priest's faith and religious knowledge as a bridge to expand its influence beyond the confines of its physical prison. Father Cook's treatment lasted months and involved complex rituals performed by experienced exorcists. Gradually, his spiritual connection was restored, but he never fully recovered his ability to deal with paranormal cases. Ed Warren documented that this was the first known case of Annabelle establishing a lasting connection with a religious individual, demonstrating that the entity had evolved and was developing new ways to exert its malignant influence. Father Cook eventually left the priesthood and became a librarian in a small rural town. He never spoke publicly about his experience with Annabelle again, but close colleagues reported that he developed anxiety attacks whenever he saw dolls or children's toys. The entity had succeeded not only in physically attacking him, but also in destroying his religious vocation and his confidence in his own faith. Now, do you understand why the Warrens kept these 3 cases absolutely secret for so long? Each story demonstrated that Annabelle possessed capabilities far beyond their initial imagination. The entity wasn't just confined to a doll. She could influence people from a distance, corrupt religious individuals, and establish connections that lasted for years. But here's the question no one wants to ask. If these are the cases that have finally been revealed, how many other incidents involving Annabelle remain completely hidden? And why, even after decades of study, do experts still consider some details too dangerous to share with the public?